Checking in with Anthony and Glenn is brought to you by HD Supply. Thanks, HD Supply.
They're great, aren't they?
I love these guys.
It's checking in with Anthony and Glenn, teaching you to be the hotelier that you wanna be. It's checking in with Anthony and Glenn.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Glenn.
I'm Anthony.
Hey, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Something really weird happened to me on the way to the podcast.
What happened to you?
Well, we're doing the podcast at the Four Seasons downtown in Manhattan, which is a beautiful hotel, by the way. And I'm walking in, and I actually got you on the phone telling me where to go in the hotel. And as I'm walking through the door...
I don't think I was telling you where to go as much as telling you to go to hell. Because what
okay, he's not funny. He's not even a little funny. But I'm walking through the door, and, you know, I'm in the hotel business 32 years.
Yeah.
I've met everyone, like I've said before. And I was up in the Catskills last week looking for the Mike Tyson gym and looking for where Mike Tyson grew up, because I'm a big Mike Tyson fan, because I'm a boxing fan. Mm-hmm. And when I'm in the Catskills every year, I always try to find where he grew up. So...
All right, so that was a doorbell, and in came someone to give us some amazing coffee, Mr. Boris.
Hey, Boris, how are you?
Excellent. How are you?
So as we were doing the podcast, the doorbell rang. We had to stop, and then we came right back on a few minutes later after you dropped off the coffee. But as you were leaving, you smiled at me, and you said, "Hey, you used to work at the Algonquin." So tell me how you know me.
Well, my guys, when I went in there, you had just left. You were the general manager there. And my guys told me that you were one of the excellent general manager in there. Mm-hmm. Then I follow you through the shows when I saw you on the shows, and then I remember you. Then in one of the shows, you say that you used to be a general manager at the
So I was general manager at Algonquin. I left, I don't know, 12 years ago, so 15 years ago. So you came on to work at the Algonquin as what?
As a cook.
As a cook?
Yes.
Oh, so you worked in the kitchen. Oh, my God. You worked in the kitchen of the Algonquin Hotel?
Yes.
Back in the day when that gentleman that was the very difficult delegate, that was the dishwasher?
Tony
yeah, we won't mention his name. We won't mention his name. But when he was, so how was the kitchen? It was tough, right?
It was, forget it. It was like all union. It was tough.
Well, you look tough. Much happier now, Boris.
I'm on the Four Seasons.
So now you're the Four Seasons. So what's the one thing? One of the things we talk about on this podcast is how we interact, whether it be union, non-union, general manager, employee, whatever it is. We're all just people. And one of the things that my career has been built on people like you who've made me look good. So the good things you heard about me at the Algonquin was just simply a reflection of everybody at the Algonquin. I just happened to be the conductor. What were the things that you heard about the team at the Algonquin before you got there, about what we did? And
well, one of the things, and German was one of the person who told me back then that you were, he give you a hard time, but you were absolutely one of the best general managers that he has ever seen.
And that was the tough guy delegate that we're talking about.
Yes, because you wanted to do so many changes, you know, and change the direction of the Algonquin, where, you know, to get to a better direction. But it was a little difficult because of the stuff that was going on. But he saw that the vision that you had.
So he was a very, very tough employee and tough delegate. And did he tell you the story where the first day we met? The first day we met, me and him almost got into a fist fight.
No, I don't remember that. He may have told me, but I don't remember that.
But wow. I'll tell that story later when you go back to work. I know you got to go back to work. How'd you like working at the Algonquin?
Oh, it was good. It was busy. Back then it was busy because we had the cabaret room.
The cabaret, it was my heart.
Yeah.
I love the cabaret.
And then we had the round table, and then we had the blue bar, and the lobby. It was like so many different stations. And then I did work there for like 5-7 years. Then I left, and then I came back as a waiter.
Yeah.
And I work as a waiter too.
Great place to work.
Yeah, it's very good. It was a really good place to work.
Well, thank you very much for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you, Anthony.
It was a pleasure meeting you.
Pleasure's mine. Good to see you.
Thanks, Boris.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing us some
and
great
thanks for watching the show.
Absolutely, always do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that was fun.
That was fun. That was unexpected. So we're sitting here doing the podcast, and the gentleman came in, noticed me, and he worked at the Algonquin. He looked like he wanted to talk, so we sat him down. We talked. But you know what was interesting about what he said, Glenn?
Yeah.
Was he mentioned a gentleman that worked in the kitchen, and he was a delegate. And the delegate in the union in New York City is basically the person that represents the employees.
Right.
And he's a worker. He was a dishwasher, but he also has a little bit more power in the sense of that he's allowed to talk to us and be direct. He
Right.
basically has the same level as a manager would, and he represents the employees. So if we're not treating the employees well, it's his job to stand up for them and then bring it to the union's attention.
That's interesting that it's somebody that's at an entry level type position as a dishwasher achieved that status within the union organization.
Well, he was voted in back in the day, and he's been there for over 30 years. And he was the representative. Now, before I was there,
Right.
He was a pretty tough person. I heard about him even before I took the job. And the first day, I think it's a pretty funny story. The first day I was there, I was pretty overwhelmed, as you can imagine, trying to turn around a legendary hotel like the Algonquin here in New York City. And actually, within not the first day, the first couple of weeks, I was walking through the kitchen, and this gentleman said, "Beep beep," and I was like, "What's beep beep?" And he's like, "Beep beep," and I'm like, I turn around, I go, "What's beep beep?" And he goes, "You're the road runner. All you do is run through the kitchen, and you don't say hello to everyone." I turned around. I was in my tuxedo because I was going to the cabaret. We had a beautiful cabaret at the Algonquin called the Oak Room, where people like Peter Cincotti and Harry Connick Jr. and Andrea Marcovici and Maud Maggart, who is Fiona Apple's sister, played at the Oak Room. So it was it's the Madison Square Garden and Cabaret. So I'm going there that night, and I'm going through the kitchen, and he says, "You never say hello to anyone." And I said, "Yes, I do. I say hello to everyone. I said hello to you." He goes, "Do you know who I am? I'm Tony Benin." Oh, I shouldn't say his name. He goes, "Do you know who I am?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And long story short, he was not very polite to me. And then I decided in that moment, it's funny that we're bringing the story up because we're talking about building your personal brand on this podcast.
Right.
So this was the moment that it's very emotional for me to even talk about. This was the moment where I decided, what was I going to be?
Right.
Was I going to be the person that led this organization, or was I going to be led? And I left a hotel called the Lucerne Hotel on the Upper West Side. And I was there 7 years, and the Dome family, Ron Dome, Sam Dome, Jay Dome, were very good to me. Just good people, and they really didn't want me to leave. And I decided to go to the Oak Room Hotel, the Algonquin Hotel in Midtown, after a gentleman named Dave Johnstone from Miller Global recruited me. And it took me a long time, about a year, to make that decision to leave the Lucerne, because Lucerne was such a great hotel.
Right.
But it was non-union, not a lot of food and beverage. It was a straight up and down hotel, 177 rooms. I was getting close to, I think, 40. I was 37 at the time, and I'd been there for a very long time. It was my first GM job, and I decided that, okay, I'll take the leap of faith and go to the Algonquin. But I was very emotional about it because the Algonquin was basically a career killer. If you did not turn this hotel around, you're basically like, oh, you went to the Algonquin, your career's done.
Why is that though? Because at least for me, maybe it's because the PR department has done such a great job, but it always had this fabled history to it, and it seemed like it was a great property.
It had a great history, but times were moving on. It wasn't renovated.
Right.
The executives would go in and were really not being able to really do what they needed to do. And there were some great general managers there, people that have taught me the business that worked there before me. But it just was. It needed a really big moment. So I came in and we decided to renovate it. But before we started renovating and all that stuff, I was walking through the kitchen, getting back to the story, and this gentleman decided to test me. And he said, started using foul language. And at that moment, my personal brand was at risk.
Right.
Everybody knew me at that time as a general manager of Lucerne Hotel, and I was kind of a guy that had a lot of, some good ideas. I was very tenacious, but I hadn't made my bones yet, really, in the industry. And I decided at that one moment, and my leg is shaking, I'm a nervous wreck, and he's looking me in the eyes, and he's looking for me to back out. And I took my jacket off. And I've never told the story outside of my close friends. This is the first time anyone's hearing the story. And I decided that I wasn't going to let him control me.
Right.
And I looked at him, and I gave him two options. We can go upstairs to the chef's office and talk like gentlemen, because the chef's office was in the kitchen right up a bunch of metal steps. Or I can go outside, and I'm not going to tell you what I told him, but you can imagine. I'm from Brooklyn. And he looked at me like I was crazy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've seen your show, so I can imagine.
Well, you've never seen this part.
Right.
So I said to him, give him two options, and he said to me, I'll never forget this as long as I live, you don't talk or act like a general manager. I use some more choice words. There's a entire kitchen looking at us. I made the very scary step of putting my hand in a very gentle way on his shoulder.
Uh-oh.
And that was either going to get him to knock me out, which
Right.
would have been fine because then he wouldn't be there anymore and I would be able to take over, or he was going to realize that, man, we're just two people trying to get stuff done. Long story short, he comes upstairs to the chef's office with me. We walk out of the office 3 hours later after every word that you could ever imagine that I can't use really in daily language came out of my mouth and his mouth, and he called me Poppy. And from that day on, he called me Poppy. He didn't call me general manager, he didn't call me Anthony, he called me Poppy. Mm-hmm. And me and him worked together to help turn around the Algonquin Hotel. We're an incredible team. So that is very interesting that when we're talking about building your personal brand, that this gentleman, the room service waiter, would come in, recognize me from the Algonquin, and say that he just told me unprompted that the gentleman in the kitchen said that I was a very good general manager because I didn't take any crap, but I wanted to get things done, and I was very good at helping people get things done. And it was just very, very interesting that it would be at that moment, like
Right.
that couldn't have been scripted any better in talking about personal brand, because I wouldn't have told that story about building my personal brand. But when you're building your personal brand, you have to decide who you really are. And at that moment, I decided I was Anthony Melchiorri. I wasn't the Algonquin. I wasn't a general manager. I was Anthony Melchiorri. And I wasn't going to let anybody take who I was away from me. If I lost my career, which I could have very easily lost my career at that moment, then that would have been okay, because if I didn't put myself on the line that way, he would have thought I was afraid of him. And the worst thing in the world, coming from Brooklyn and being a kid that grew up, I wouldn't say in a tough area, but you had to stand up for yourself. The one thing, if you backed up even a half a step, you were picked on the rest of your life.
Right, because it changes the whole dynamic of the relationship with the person. You've ceded control to that person. You're allowing them to take over what you will be seen as within that organization.
Right. So I knew that Algonquin did not have a great reputation at the time, and that this gentleman and a couple of other people were controlling the environment. And once I got them, I actually went upstairs to my managers the next day and said, by the way, this gentleman in the kitchen, so-and-so is going to be the assistant general manager. And they all looked at me like I was out of my mind. I was like, well, that's what the title I gave him.
Right.
And he's an honorary assistant general manager. In other words, any decision we make, we talk to him first.
Right.
And we say, hey, we're going to make this decision, this policy change. You've been here 30-something years. Do you see any issue or problem with this policy change? And he never, ever went against us because we brought him as part of the process.
Yeah, right. Makes sense. So you were able to maintain what you wanted your brand to be while also, stomping out a negative situation and then turning it as someone that could have been an adversary into an advocate for what you were trying to accomplish.
Because one of the things that he saw my sensitivity, that I was willing to listen and say when we were wrong, but I was also willing. I was standing there and dying in my shoes. I was not backing up. I was going to die on that spot, and physically or my career, one of both those things were going that day, and I didn't care. But I wasn't going to let you take control of me. And then what we did was we did something which is incredible that most people don't do.
Right.
Which I didn't think is incredible. As I got older and I realized in this career field, when you say the words, I'm wrong or I'm sorry, that's shocking to people. When the general manager, vice president, executive owner, whatever I was doing at that time, when you say you're sorry, that is powerful because it's a vulnerability. And like we talked about before, vulnerability is something that people don't like to expose. They don't like to expose the vulnerability of themselves. So I was in meetings with whether it be union members, non-union members, and I would stop a manager and say, no, they're right, we're wrong, we'll change, we're sorry. The power of that is insane. So my personal brand is someone that will stand up for what is right, but I will also say I'm sorry, and I will back off, and I will allow you your moment. And I think that is so important. And I didn't realize until that gentleman came in the room that was the moment I started to recognize what my personal brand was.
Right. Interesting. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about how you all out there could achieve your personal brand through more stories about our experience in branding ourselves as soon as we come back right after this commercial break.
Hospitality professionals rely on HD Supply facilities and maintenance for the day-to-day maintenance of their engineering departments, housekeeping supplies, as well as their capital expenditure renovations. And why? Because they're reliable and they've been around for decades. They have over 100,000 products, and they have a nationwide distribution system. They have an amazing dedicated sales representation force, and they have the tools, technology, and specialized services to make your hotel spectacular.
All right, so we're back from the commercial break. Anthony, I want to talk a little bit about personal branding. What is it to achieve that personal brand? When people say Anthony Melchiorri or when they say Glenn Haussman, we have a distinct image that it provides. But how do you find that personal image? How do you create that personal branding? Where does it actually come from within you? I know for me it was a long time journey trying to figure out who I am, but how did you find your way to understand who you are authentically and be able to relate that through your branding?
Well, as I said before, when I was at the Algonquin and there was that moment that I was challenged on, was I going to allow the team to run the show, or were we going to run the show together? And in order to run the show together, you had to grab the reins, and once I have the reins completely controlled, I can then hand them off. But I can't have them handed off to me when they feel like handing them off to me. So at that moment, when I was challenged by the person in the kitchen, I decided that I was going to step in instead of step back, and it worked for me. So that was the moment that I realized that authenticity and deciding to fail doing your job as opposed to succeed doing your job by somebody else's standard. So I believe my personal brand has to do with authenticity. And going back to the show, when I started doing Hotel Impossible and I put my hands on my head and I decided, hey, I'm going to do a TV show that people hopefully would want to watch, I basically took my entire career, 3 children, a family, all the responsibilities financially that I had, and decided that I was going to be on television. How was I going to do that? I was going to do that by being authentic. I can be told you're not good enough, right, or no, you can't have this job, if I'm being my true self.
That's an interesting point that you make right there, because we have to be our true selves. And if people tell you to do something else that's betraying who you feel that you are, then you're not really going to be your authentic self. And I think that probably holds you back from ultimately finding success. But that true sense of who you are has to be genuine and not be a jerk at the same time.
Why are your grandparents always so cool and always so calm?
Because they've seen a lot, and at least my grandparents, they lived through the Depression, and anything else after that was just like, who the hell cares?
They've been able to become their authentic self.
Yeah.
They got maybe a couple dollars in the bank. Their house is paid for. They got a couple of meals a day on the table.
Right.
Their kids are out of the house, and they may not be rich, but they may even be struggling a little bit. But you know what? They figured it out, and they figured out that a lot of times they like themselves, and they like who they are. And anything you do, whether it be this podcast or whether it be Hotel Impossible, Extreme Hotels, whether it be my business, RJ Hospitality, whatever it is, I've decided that I am who I am. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. And if you don't like it, that's okay. You can hire somebody else. And that really, you go back to the cartoon of Popeye when I was a kid, and he used to say, I am what I am. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. And those words really never meant anything to me until this just second when I said it, that I am what I am. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. Think about that.
Right.
I am what I am.
Right.
So any brand you start, I'm doing a class for Cornell University, eCornell, called How to Build Your Personal Brand.
Oh,
And
that's interesting. A good thing we're talking about this topic then. You must know a few things about that.
Yes. So first of all, to have Cornell ask you to do a topic, anything you want, and I said, well, I'd like to do something called How to Pull Your Head Out of Your Ass. And they said, well, you can't do that topic. How about How to Build Your Personal Brand?
Right.
I was like, that's perfect.
I mean, that sounds pretty much the same type of topic to me anyway.
So we shot a full day, and we got about 30 videos out of it. And in those 30 videos, what I talk about continuously and consistently is whatever you're doing, if you're not doing it with your authenticity, with your full heart, with your full being, it's going to come back and bite you in the ass. It could be 30 years from now when you say, I just wasted 30 years of my life for the gold watch and for retirement, but now I'm going to go be me. How many people you know say, oh, when I retire, I'm
Right.
going to go do this, I'm going to do that. Now, you don't have to leave your job if you're, say, you work for the city, and whether you're a cop or a fireman or whatever you are, and you have this really strong pension and you have good financial stability, whatever it is, you don't want to change that because, I wish I had a government job right now, even though it's tough as it is. My wife's a teacher and it's not easy.
Right.
But there's some consistency there, whereas every day I have to earn, I have to
Right.
fund my own pension.
Well, that's the whole thing. When you're an entrepreneur, you have to make it work. But when you have a job that has that consistency, it may not necessarily be as rewarding for certain people, whereas certain people may not be able to handle that entrepreneurial spirit. And I think understanding what category you fit in is an essential part of figuring out who you are as your authentic self and what your personal brand should be.
100%. And my point was that you can still bring your authentic self even if you're not an entrepreneur, even if you're not maybe in the job you want. Maybe you always want to be a cop, a fireman, sanitation worker, whatever it is that you're doing, you can bring your personal spirit to that. I know sometimes I walk down the street and the police officer doesn't say hello to me, and sometimes they say hello to me.
Right.
So you can bring your own personal brand to whatever you do for a living, and you don't have to wait till you're retired. So I've decided, I worked for a company that was a asset manager company here in the city, and it really wasn't my brand. It wasn't really my personality, but I never stopped being me, and I always brought my personal brand to it. So regardless of what job you have to bring your personal brand to it, because if you don't, there's no authenticity. Whether you're a cop, fireman, like I said, or whether you're in the hotel business or you're a doctor, who likes to go into a doctor's office and everybody in the doctor's office looks like you're doing them a favor by being there, which I've been in many of those offices where you walk into a dentist or a doctor and they feel like you're doing them a favor, although my doctor's and dentist office is very nice.
Well, that's good to know. Well, all right. So I like that what you're talking about, authenticity, and everybody has a personal brand, no matter what role you're in life, right? So it's not just whether or not you want to be on TV or if you want to host a podcast. We all have a personal brand, and it's the way that we, I think, relate, or the universe relates to us, how people view us. And if you have an idea of that authentic self of who you are, then you could kind of, I don't want to use the word manipulate, but massage it in such a way that you could utilize it to your advantage, and it creates like good branding. Like if I say McDonald's, everybody knows exactly what that means. So if people say Anthony Melchiorri, they should know exactly who you are and what that stands for, right?
I remember I was at the Algonquin Hotel, and I had to go into my file. I don't know if I told you the story on a previous podcast. And I went into my file, and there was a reference sheet, and there were 7 names on the reference sheet. Before I got the job, I gave them 7 references, and they went and they got all references. And I'm reading the reference sheet. This is maybe 2 years after I worked there, a year after I worked there. And they all said the same thing. Now, these are my friends and people I've worked with. They all say the same thing. He is the most difficult person you'll ever work with, but he gets the job done. They literally all said the same thing. And I called up a few of my friends, David Weidlich being one of them. If you're listening to this, thanks, David. He gave them a reference, and he said, good guy, but he's a pain in the ass, and he'll get the job done. So I was in the military, and I worked for the colonel who was in charge of the base, and I was a nuclear missile base.
You worked for the colonel? You must have loved all that fried chicken.
And I'm going to forget that you said that. So so I was at Whiteman Air Force Base, and I was worked for the colonel, and then we were a stealth base. We were the only hotel, the only base to have the stealth bomber to this day.
Wow.
And so we were talking about some pretty serious stuff, right? So how do you work for a colonel and be in the military and be a guy from Brooklyn that has a strong opinion? Well, you say sir, yes sir, no sir a lot, but you can also bring your personal brand. I'll give you an example. The colonel went away for like a week somewhere, I can't remember, and we were having an air show, and he put me in charge of whatever he put me in charge of for the air show, I can't remember. But I remember him mentioning once when we were walking out to the tarmac to get him on the plane, he didn't like that whole hallway going onto the tarmac. There was something about the hallway. He didn't like the pictures. He just didn't like it. He didn't think it was a good vibe when civilians came on. It didn't look really like aviation or whatever it was. I can't remember. And so he said, and that's all he mentioned it. He didn't tell me to fix it. So in the week he was gone, I went about calling everyone on base to say the colonel wants us to change that hallway, and this is how we're going to change it.
Right.
And we started changing it, and he came back and he goes, wow, who did this? And everybody pointed to me, and I was always going to get in trouble. And he was like, great job. I said, thank you very much. I didn't do it. Everybody else did it. But like I use my personal brand, which is I get stuff done, and I probably would have got myself in a little bit of trouble because I was using his name, and the one thing you don't do in the military is you don't use the colonel's name unless the colonel tells you to do something. So I kind of like stretched the line there a little bit, but I got a job done, and I was really proud of myself that I was able to get it done without getting in trouble or court-martialed, and without the colonel getting mad at me. So I give that example as a way, because words are words. Like you listen to a lot of inspirational people and blah, blah, blah. I want examples. I want stories when I learn. And so that's a story of how you can work within any rigid organization and still bring your personal brand to the environment without getting yourself fired.
Right, and I think that's so important. I think I had that kind of a struggle in a different way when it came to figuring out what my voice was as a writer. And I think we can find that struggle to find your personal brand and that authentic you, because we spend a lot of time, I think, and I see this with stand-up comedians as well, when they first start, they wind up impersonating or trying to take on the personality of the folks that they like. And I think I did that in terms of the way that I was writing and who I was trying to be through my writing. But it wasn't until I had the epiphany that if I was true to myself and I spoke within my own voice, much like famous comedians have a very distinct voice, if I could do that through my writing and through my speaking and my communication skills, then I would be able to find success because I knew exactly who I was and how to communicate through that window.
Right. And a lot of people ask me, but you don't understand, Anthony. I work for this person, and what an asshole. And the whole company, it's so stressful. No matter what I do, I don't get a raise, I don't get a promotion. They're unfair, they're not moral.
Right.
And you don't understand, it's different. You're a guy on TV, man. You don't understand. And I'm like, first of all, I got myself on TV because I worked my ass off and I wrote the show, and I was fortunate enough to get the right people. So I changed my circumstance. You have to change your circumstance. Yes, you're not going to change your boss. You're not going to all of a sudden make your boss who's maybe 40 years old, 30 years old, 50 years old change, because people don't change. They shift, but they don't change. And certainly you as an employer aren't going to shift them. So the only thing you can do is take personal control of yourself and decide to, either stay there and suck it up for a year because that's good on your resume, and long term that's going to help you, like the Plaza Hotel. For 2 years I was there, and it was very stressful. But I knew I didn't want to be one of those people fired or laid off. I was going to suck it up, and I did. And when I left, it was a badge of honor to work at the Plaza Hotel. So there's sometimes where you just shut up and take it, and because you're getting something from it. And there's sometimes where you just don't want to shut up and you want to move on. And, but you can't lose yourself. Just maintaining for a year to get something that you want out of it is not losing yourself. So it's really complicated sometimes, but you're in charge of yourself. You're the boss of you.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Now, I started my own business about 2.5 years ago, and it's not like I just woke up one day and said, I'm going to start this business. Well, I did actually wake up one day and said I'm going to start a business, but it took me a year of working toward that goal in order to start that business.
And you were
that
petrified when you did, I'm sure.
Oh my God! And we could do a whole show on just what a freak I was. And matter of fact, if you listen to the 100th episode of the No Vacancy Show, I talk about my journey in the opening segment about that and how I made it to going and actually taking that leap, which in retrospect, people told me must have been super, super scary. I was very involved in it at the time. I didn't realize what a big deal it was in the whole scheme of things and the way we're looked at in society. I just went ahead and did it. But I did it in a smart way where I prepared for it. So yes, I had to subjugate myself for a year, and I had to keep my mouth shut in a lot of times, and I couldn't necessarily be my authentic self on the outside, but I was able to remain my authentic self on the inside because I knew what my long-term goals were. I knew how I was going to achieve those goals, and I knew that in the end of my personal branding would be able to shine through if I just did what I needed to do and was patient.
And the most important thing is, especially for the young people out there, save your money. When you have money, and I always call it the
Great
FU
point.
fund, you have an ability to take a leap.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you have to have a lot of money. When I made my leap into TV, I had enough money to take the leap, but not enough money that if the leap failed, that I'd be okay. I'd have been screwed. But I was able to take the leap. And so when you hear your mom and dad or you hear your boss or you hear whoever, a teacher, saying save your money and be wise with your money, I cannot stress that enough. I wish I was more wise with my money when I was younger.
I wish I was this past week.
Right.
You know?
and because saving your money is power. I hate to say it, but if you have a couple dollars and you want to take a risk, you can take that risk. Why are there so many restaurants? Because people save $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. They open the restaurant. 90% don't work. Some of them work. It's in order to take the risk, to take the challenge. When I did Hotel Impossible, I went a year without working before Hotel Impossible.
Oh my goodness.
A year of going through a large part of my savings to wait to this show to kick. And then even when I got the show, one of the fallacies of you made $1 million, you're rich because of Hotel Impossible. And I can guarantee you 100% Hotel Impossible did not make me rich, okay, at all. It's not that kind of show. It's not on CBS or ABC or NBC. I still got to work for a living, and I do well, and TV does pay me well, but it's not, I can't end. Like when Seinfeld ends, Seinfeld doesn't have to work anymore.
Right.
Anthony Melchiorri still got to work if my shows end. So, but I was in a position where I can take that leap and I can try to be the guy on TV because I had a little bit of FU money. That disappeared very quickly, but thank God I made a leap to solid ground.
But let's say, hypothetically, if you weren't diligent and you didn't put away that money and didn't have that savings, do you think you would have even been able to do that?
I couldn't have.
Right.
I have 3 kids. No way.
Yeah.
Who's going to pay my mortgage for a year? No. I had zero chance of making that leap. That's why I thought I would interject saving your money because, yes, I would. That's when you trap yourself, right? It's like you're trapping yourself. You want to go on that vacation for 2 weeks, or you want to spend that money, but you also have this goal. But you have to decide what you want, because no, I would not be able to make the leap to television if I did not have enough money to support myself and my
Right.
family for X amount of time.
Right.
I remember right before I got the call, I was seconds, I can't even say hours,
Right.
seconds from making calls on my Rolodex. Hey guys, I don't
Oh,
think this
God.
Steve thing's going to happen. I need a job. Get me a job. I need a job. I couldn't, honestly, before the show hit, I probably could not last another 2 weeks.
So what happens when this show hits and you're not making that big money, but now everybody thinks you're making the big money? Do you go and get a job somewhere, or what happens?
I was making enough money, and I still had enough savings that it compensated. I was fine,
Okay.
and my
All
wife
right.
works, so
Yeah. Okay,
so it
good.
was fine. And then then eventually you make more money, and then I have other things that I do, and I have my own business. And I had my own business at the time, but I couldn't do anything because I couldn't commit to anything. So it all worked out, and between everything I do,
Right.
it all worked out. But it's money is a big part of it. You if you're trapped, you're trapping yourself. Don't trap yourself. And I would love to open up right now. One of my number one priorities is to open up my own hotel.
Right.
Now I have investors that are willing to invest in my own hotel, and once I find the right project, I'll do it. I would love to not have to have investors. I would love to be able
Right.
to go in the bank and get $25 million and open my own friggin' hotel. You can't do it. You need investors. But when you have investors, they tell you kind of what you could do and can't do. So yeah, that's something where you have to, just you have to fall in line a little bit, but you still have to be true to your brand and who you are. But money does set you free, but you can do a lot of things without money. You can do a lot of, whether it be podcasting, or you can do whether it be social media, whatever it is, you can find an outlet, even if you're financially strapped. Don't make excuses, man. Just don't make excuses. Everyone's got an excuse. It's like everybody's got a butt.
Right.
Everybody's got one. I can make 100,000 excuses. I can tell you 100,000 reasons I couldn't have been here today.
Yeah.
But I committed, so I'm here. So just stop with the excuses, and it's not even, I hate to say believe in yourself because it sounds so
it's
cliche.
not just, it is partly believing in yourself, but it's also just working your ass off.
No one gives a shit.
Right. Nobody cares about you.
So we said this before.
Yeah.
No one gives a shit.
Right.
So just do what you got to do, because at the end of the day, no one's going to pay your damn bills. No
Right.
one's going to pay your car payment.
Right.
No one's going to give a shit if you got that promotion. Like I said before, if I have shows or I don't have shows, if I can pay my mortgage, no one gives a shit. They'll see me on the street and they'll say, "Oh, I remember when you were on TV," and then when I walk away, they don't give a shit if I lost everything.
Yeah.
How many celebrities and people on TV where you see that have made it and then all of a sudden everything crashed and burned? People don't give a crap. So don't give a crap. Just care about what you care about.
Right. And honestly, my No Vacancy show, I'm making money on that now, but I didn't right away. I didn't start it saying I'm going to make money. I spent a year and a half before I even started thinking about being able to monetize it. I spent a year and a half. I spent a whole lot of time building out my novacancynews.com site and all of that kind of stuff. I did it because I knew eventually it would pay dividends. I had trust in my personal brand that people were going to connect with me in these different ways. I just had to do it. I'd have patience with it, and I just had to go for it.
But as being a hotel guy, one of the things I'm concerned about with your no vacancy is, no vacancy in our industry is a bad term. When are you going to have vacancy?
Well, probably if these shows keep going this way, I'll have a vacancy right across from me because you're going to drop out of this show. But yeah, that's a good point, because you definitely don't want to. You definitely don't want to have a sellout, because that means you've been underselling your rates throughout the entire time.
So I am very interested in this subject of building your own personal brand. So if you want to reach out to us on social media, you want to reach out to us, and you want us to continue this conversation or have a certain guest on, I think the personal branding will be something that we talk about a lot in the future, because really when it comes down to it, really life is about a personal brand, and people just don't talk enough about it. It's like you think of IBM in the 80s, or you think of Google when it first started. You have an image of that client, of that employee. Employees are much different anymore. Now it's like you walk into a company and you really don't know what they do, because the employees are so different, and everybody wants them to bring their own personal brand. Like just now, we were talking to the general manager of the Four Seasons, and he doesn't hire experience; he hires potential.
Right.
And so you really can't get a sense anymore of what the brand is, because people are starting to understand the employee brings their personal brand. And if they do that well, then the overarching brand will be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. If you haven't heard the show that we just recently ran with the general manager here at the Four Seasons Hotel, New York downtown, Tomas Carreras, go check that out in the Checking In with Anthony and Glenn feed. So, Anthony, I think we got to wrap up this particular show. Tell me something about you that I don't know.
You don't know that last week I was on vacation at a resort up in the Catskills, and we were playing volleyball, we were playing poker, we were playing bocce, and I lost terribly at everything. So at the award ceremony, my friend Paulie decided to get up in the middle of, actually not the award ceremony, but in the middle of lunch, and say, ladies and gentlemen, we want to have a special award for Anthony Melchiorri. You will never win anything at this resort award. So they gave me a medal for being the biggest loser.
Excellent. I love it.
So tell me something I don't know about you.
Well, I'll stick with the Catskills theme. Being a nice Jewish boy growing up on Long Island, I used to go to the Catskills all the time, either for summer or usually over the holiday break with the families. So I have a lot of experience going to the kosher resorts up in the Catskills. It was a lot of fun, and it was much to my delight that when Dirty Dancing came out, the family was known as the Haussman family in the movie. So don't put baby in the corner. That's baby Haussman.
Really?
Yes.
All right, so I won't put you in the corner, but I will tell you, let's get out of here.
Yeah, let's get out of here, and I want to thank everybody for listening. Anthony, how can we find you online?
You can find me at Anthony Hotels, or you can find us at
checking in with Anthony and Glenn. And I, of course, am at Traveling Glenn, and you could just drop us a note anywhere where social media is, anywhere in the show notes, because we really do want to hear from you, because as much as we love talking to each other, we want to address what you want to learn. We're
I don't
here
like
for
talking to
you
you that much.
Now, well, yeah, all right. Well, we'll work that out in our next episode. All right, we're out of here. We're going to go check out our soon-to-be marital therapist, or whatever we call that. All right,
Our
guys.
podcast therapist.
Yeah, podcast therapist. We'll see you next time on Checking In with Anthony and Glenn.
It's checking in with Anthony and Glenn, teaching you to be the hotelier that you wanna be. It's checking in with Anthony and Glenn.